You're listening to Cattails, the podcast of SLC Faculty Local 417, your union connection. Each episode, we bring you real stories from our members, practical tips on your rights, and the kind of information that helps us all move forward.
Welcome to Cattails. I'm your host, Julie White, and today we're going to be talking about uncertainty, change, and the strength of our community as we navigate it together. In this episode, we sit down with Christina Decarie and Tabatha Rutledge to unpack what came out of our recent fireside chats. Everything from the strong turnout to the thoughtful and sometimes difficult questions that members raised, to the realities that we're all facing as the college moves towards layoffs and the unprecedented merger with Fleming. You'll hear Christina speak candidly about the limits of what can be answered right now, because in many cases, the answers simply don't exist yet. You'll hear Tabatha reflect on the kinds of questions that members are asking, the intricacies they're surfacing, and how those questions help the union prepare, advocate, and educate. Together, they walk us through what involuntary transfers may look like, what happens if you decline one, and why so much of this work is still unfolding in real time. And on Tuesday, there was a historic first day of bargaining for part-time and sessional faculty. Yes, that in itself is really newsworthy. But when the talks resumed after a lunch break, the solidarity of the CAAT family was revealed. Full and part-time support staff, full-time faculty joined the part-time bargaining team to deliver a message of solidarity related to the College Employer Council's lack of disclosure. And it was followed up by OPSEU SEFPO serving the CEC with a formal unfair labor practice, calling for an immediate halt to the Fleming-St. Lawrence merger process and a halt to further layoffs until the employer finally discloses the information that they've been sitting on. This isn't symbolic. This is the union saying, you don't get to restructure an entire sector in the dark. Not anymore. I sat down with OPSEU SEFPO President JP Hornick to talk about why the union took this step, what the ULP demands, and what it means for the thousands of faculty and support staff who've been left to navigate layoffs, program closures, and a merger announced without transparency or consultation. 418 Lead Steward April Stevens from the Kingston campus delivered a strong message to the CEC about the recent full-time support bargaining round, a round defined by missing information, withheld data, and members blindsided by decisions that reshape their working lives. April breaks down what the employer refused to provide, how that undermined negotiations, and why the surprise merger announcement has only deepened the urgency for transparency. This episode, it's about accountability. It's about a sector in crisis, a workforce under pressure, and a union drawing a clear boundary. No more secrecy, no more unilateral decisions, no more pretending that layoffs and mergers are business as usual. Finally, we'll sit down in a Know Your Rights segment that breaks down the protections in our collective agreement around layoffs, displacement rights, recall, and severance, because information's powerful, especially now. So Christina and Tabatha, we had some fireside chats just under 2 weeks ago. Do you want to talk a little bit about how they went?
I thought it was great turnout, and I was really pleased to hear that the afternoon fireside chat was also very well attended. Tabatha and I both, of course, regretted that we could not attend it, but we were called into CESC meetings, which we had to attend. So we're sorry that we missed it. Very pleased to see the engagement from membership. And I was glad to see also, it seemed to me that people felt comfortable asking questions, and I found that reassuring because we do want to answer your questions as best as we can. I did say at one point that, sometimes we're asked questions and the answer literally does not exist yet. So I'm not hiding information. I'm not being not transparent. It's just that it's the kind of question that in order to get an answer, a lot of work has to happen, and that work hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Tabatha, what were your impressions?
I echo Christina's comments. The part I found interesting was our members are always great about bringing up questions that we might not have thought of that would affect not just them, but their fellow colleagues. So the intricacies that if they bring to light and stuff like that, we can continue to work to get those answers for them. And things about involuntary transfers and about traveling if, think from one campus to another and the parameters in the collective agreement. So I think it's a really good educational moment to be able to bring light to that and make everybody feel like they're comfortable with the content. So our members are fantastic. They're always great to help share their views and, as I said, educate others.
Excellent. And you mentioned involuntary transfers. We haven't talked about that within kind of the span of the podcast. Christina, do you want to touch on what involuntary transfers may look like as we're
Sure.
heading in? And
Well, high level changes that are coming is that we are all aware that we are anticipating faculty layoffs. We've been anticipating them for over a year. So we experienced as a college staff layoffs, and managers were let go over a year ago, and our programs were cut over a year ago, or suspended rather. So the approach of some other colleges has been to immediately lay off faculty affected by program suspensions. That was not the approach of St. Lawrence College. I mean, there were like extremely slight layoffs, and certainly contract faculty have seen that their contracts have not been reoffered. So while that's not officially a layoff, it certainly feels like a layoff or the end of a job. But, so the CESC has bought a lot of time for us. It has bought over a year of employment, of steady employment for those of us who have not been affected by changes yet. But we know that that has to come to an end. We know that because we're seeing some colleges are in their second, third, fourth round of layoffs. And we're coming into what is effectively our first round. So we know it's coming. And what does an involuntary transfer look like, or what does it mean? So there are layoffs. You get the news, unfortunately, your position has been eliminated, and then everything that goes along with that discussion. But there's also the possibility of something called an involuntary transfer. And that is where you might be transferred between programs within the same campus. So you might go from a program that is adjacent to yours, like a similar program. And it might be so similar that it doesn't even feel like a transfer, doesn't feel like a change. Or it might feel like a big change, right? It might feel like a change in program altogether. You would never be transferred into something that you have absolutely no expertise or experience in, right? You are only transferred into something if you have the education and the experience and the expertise to teach in that area. So you can transfer, within programs, you can transfer like to a different school within the same campus, right? Or you could transfer into a different category of employment, like counselor to professor or professor to counselor. But there's also involuntary transfer between campuses. So you could be transferred from, say, Brockville to Cornwall or Cornwall to Kingston, and any one of those combinations. So we had questions about, well, could I be transferred to Fleming? And the answer is that, maybe eventually, but it's hard to say. That's an example of those conversations literally have not happened in order to do the work to make that happen. So there has never been a college merger ever. So that answer does not exist anywhere. We have to create that answer. And will that answer happen at the CESC level? Will it occur at the merger level? Will it occur at the collective agreement negotiation level? Probably all of the above. But what are those discussions? They haven't even started yet. And so what will the answer be? I don't know. I'm sorry.
okay. And if we're offered an involuntary transfer, I know that was news for a lot of people. And if we don't accept it, what does that mean?
That means that you're choosing to leave your job.
So there's no severance. There were a lot of questions about what's going to happen when we merge seniority lists, perhaps with Fleming.
Again, is it going to happen? Probably eventually, according to everything that I've read and been told, that is supposed to be what happens. Will it happen within the year when the college says all the work of the integration or merger will be completed? I don't know. Will it never be merged? I don't know. Will it be a completely unique situation where we have separate seniority lists for historically separate colleges? I don't know. Those conversations and that work and those negotiations have not started.
Okay. Tabatha, how do we support members kind of in this time of, we're living in this unknown? How do we best support people?
Well, I think that the Fireside Chat was a first step. Then we have been asking for people's resumes, CVs to be sent to us so that we can advocate on their behalf. We still do not have everyone's or even close to everyone's resumes. So it is really hard at times to look at their transferable skills. So if to the best of our abilities to support members is to obtain them. So please pass on to your colleagues to send them to me. It's in our newsletter, we've been putting it out there, etc. The other thing is to tell them that we'll be with them. When meetings arrive, if they arrive, but when they arrive for a layoff notification or even an involuntary transfer. So that's another thing. An individual may be notified and called to a meeting, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're layoff. I do believe they're planning on for some of the involuntary transfers that are more significant, such as a transfer from one campus to another, not the ones where if you were going from like the straight business to like BCom or something, they may not do a meeting for that. It may just be some sort of written like a email letter notification. But if it's a significant transfer, I think they'll be having a meeting, and then you don't have to make a decision right then. You'll have a steward, one at least, potentially more, with the members, and then you can have questions, go away, have questions, and decisions don't have to be made in that moment. We'll look at all the different options on the table and let in our members make an informed decision about what path they want to take, and the process that's involved. There is even training. We're going to be doing training. As stewards, we want to make sure we are as prepared in the process and the college, and us are working together and making sure we're prepared on the process. I think that's a good step to supporting members, is for us to be as educated as possible. I hope I answered the question, Julie.
And again, we don't know when that's going to happen.
We don't. We're just gonna, we'll receive training for if the eventuality does happen. We'd like to make sure that it is the first time, as Christina said, in history that this is this type of thing. This is really kind of our first round if it ever happens, our layoff process. So we're getting prepared. And if it doesn't happen, then, education's education. It's never bad.
All right, good. And we're also headed into elections for our local. We are seeing change. Christina, you're retiring. We're probably going to have more change happening. So we're certainly looking to attract new blood. We're looking for many hands. We have a lot of work to do in the future, and our elections are coming up on May 28th.
And we've had a lot of changes in the past few years. So like Christina's has announced a retirement. Jay Krawchuk is going to be retiring. Dan Summers has recently retired. We've had a variety of people have to step away, etc. And other people try to fill roles. We have a fantastic team. It's very supportive. If anybody steps forward, you don't have to be an expert. When you come in as a novice, we support each other about answering questions when you're not sure of how to respond to a member. We also have a tool that's been developed to help us with capturing and answering information, things like that, so that our stewards feel better prepared. I'm really impressed with the new people that have stepped up in the past year. As you said, new blood, but it's fantastic to see their expertise brought into the fold, because many hands make light work, but also many expertise, makes things so much better, so that we can do better outreach and support our members. Anybody has any questions, reach out to any one of our current stewards, and we'll let you know you're not in it alone. Okay. And there's a variety of positions. You don't have to take a large role. You can be a supporting actor type of position. If you have questions, let us know.
All right. And Christina, in terms of kind of the tone that you're getting from faculty right now, what's it like? What are you feeling? What are you hearing?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty. People don't know what the future holds for them. It has been, they've seen the news and they've heard about how things have been at other colleges. Conestoga in particular has had a very rough go of it. What does it mean to be laid off? What does the process look like? Lots of questions. Another reminder, Tabatha did emphasize that at a meeting like this, you're not alone and you have support and you don't have to make decisions right away. But on top of that, the process it's not like a meeting and you're out. It's a process, right? So there is 90 days of notice. So if you do receive notice, there is 90 days notice. And then on top of that, we prepay for our vacation, right? So we're getting close. The closer and closer we get to vacation time, the closer and closer we are to a full 2 months worth of vacation that we have prepaid for. And that money is yours because you've earned it. On top of that, a person could choose to be on a recall list if they anticipate that there are programs coming on board that they would be appropriate for. And there's time to look at all of this, right? Like there's the 3 months notice, the 90 days notice, where you absorb the news, you think about your future with the college, programs coming on board with the college. So as stressful as this is, there is time. Nothing should be rushed. There should be information. And that said, until things happen, a lot of the questions I get are like, they're great questions, but the answer is very often, well, it depends. And so until something happens, you can't start the process of answering the question because you don't know what the situation is yet. And that is cold comfort. That is not helpful. I know it's not helpful, but it is a very stressful time for people.
So right now, it's a matter of just being there for one another.
It is. And, this 2 month will pass, right? It's a hard thing to get through. Somebody did ask, when will I know that I'm safe from layoff? They're hoping that there was some kind of sign. If I get my schedule, if I get my SWIFT, you're never safe. I'm sorry. There is no golden ticket that says we're all done now because the CSC has been meeting for over a year. It's been over a year of work and we are still meeting. Our work is not done, right? And we just heard about the merger 2 weeks ago. So we are on shifting sands. Everything is changing all the time.
And it's not like we haven't seen changes. Our partial load numbers have been
atrocious.
decimated.
Yeah, I can't say it enough that we need to be very sensitive to the fact that we have a lot of coworkers and former coworkers who feel laid off without the privilege of a recall list or a severance package. They're just not working here anymore. And there's a lot of them.
And this really is the push to more precarity. All right. In terms of anything hopeful that you heard during the fireside chat, were there any positive smoke signals that were coming out?
College does seem to be optimistic that the merger with Fleming will bring more programming opportunities. I don't know enough about the way things work to share that enthusiasm because to run a program, we all know you need enrollment, you need expertise to teach it, you need an industry to support the graduates that come from it, and it takes money. And if we had all kinds of money, we wouldn't be suspending programs that historically have been full to begin with. So, the college says this is the way it's going to be. We're going to have more programs as a result. Maybe we will. And the college is working on bringing more programs on board. I know that those are not empty promises. I know they really are doing the work. A lot of them are in healthcare. Naturally, we do need healthcare workers. It's going to be a difficult time. And as difficult as it is for faculty, remember that the reason for a merger is to save money. And it's to save money on shared services in particular. So for all of our friends who work in support services, in support staff, in all of these kind of like back of house, all the stuff that makes the college run, once we start sharing those services, there's going to be fewer people doing them.
And when we hear at the town hall, when Glenn was talking about a gap in funding of $2,000 per domestic student, and we're looking to increase more than.
Yeah. The gap doesn't close. Yeah, the gap is still there. The gap is still there. And our provincial government does not value or respect post-secondary education.
Anything else to add about the fireside?
Stay tuned for more. Thank you for engaging. Thank you to everybody who came out and asked those really great questions that unfortunately I can't answer. Like I am sorry that I can't answer those questions, but hold on to those questions and thank you for reminding us that those questions are out there and that you have them.
Okay. And there's a number that we're taking forward now to management as well. And they don't have a lot of those answers yet either.
Because the work either hasn't been done or, like I said, it's a matter of, well, it depends.
And the other message that we've continued to send through the whole process was just to be kind to your fellow colleagues, be compassionate. We're all in the same boat. We're trying to navigate these very rough waters, and please don't add other stress to, or sometimes that bombardment of questions you ask them, well, I wonder how this is going to work, and this is going to work, and this is going to work. That can be kind of triggering to another person. So just be cognizant that don't add more stress to another person you're working with, if at all possible, because we are trying to get through this together.
Yeah, they might just not want to talk about it. It might be overwhelming, and to go through all those questions can be very hard. And don't make assumptions about anything or anybody, right? So, for example, I have heard only congratulations and kind wishes when I share the news that I'm retiring. But just for the record, I'm not retiring because I want to. I'm retiring because working at the college is no longer tenable. So it's very nice to hear thank you. I hope that nobody thinks that I'm like getting away scot-free or anything, but I do feel like I am one of the casualties in everything that is happening. So you don't know what other people are going through, what their motivations are, or how they're experiencing what is happening to them. So try to be aware of that.
And decisions also aren't based on how nice you are to your boss,
Absolutely not.
how much people like you, how
No.
many extra town halls or how many extra open houses you go to, or the best booth at open house. What are they based on?
Well, Tabatha and Jillian do all the heavy lifting on that. So I'll let Tabatha answer that.
Thank you. So the process was outlined before we even looked at one name, so that it's followed through the exact same process. And then we work our way through kind of to the lowest senior person. So there's a whole process. I won't get into the major details right now, but we follow it the same. We have been lucky, and I've said this before, many of our faculty are cross-qualified. So there was ability in the past year, and that's what's helped us maintain full-time employment for as long as we have. But as Christina said, the sand has shifted at different times throughout this, and we've had to, make adjustments to what the new parameters of what the college is looking at. But again, it's all by seniority, and even if there was a tie, there's a process in place to ensure. And even if someone, the whole involuntary transfer, all of that follows a process.
Joining me now is OPSEU SEFPO President JP Hornick. This first day of part-time sessional bargaining wasn't just a milestone, it was a shift in power. JP breaks down why it matters and what comes next.
Yeah, so it's taken 20 years to get here, but this is the final piece in the college puzzle. We've welcomed in our comrades in the college academic part-time and sessional unit, and this is the first day of their bargaining. But even more, what's happened today is that we brought in leaders from all 4 of our units to stand together in front of this College Employer Council team and say, we are actually demanding change. We need you to treat us as equal partners in this process. We need real disclosure. Like, they knew coming into the past 3 tables what was coming in this system. Right? They could not have not known. They're the bargaining agent, for goodness sake. So we're seeing unprecedented levels of layoffs. We're seeing campus mergers and program closures on scales we've never seen before. And they've held this information, deep in their pockets rather than invite us in to discuss how to mitigate it and save the system.
So we had a real show of power today. And this is one you've probably been imagining for a number of years.
Yeah, for sure. But I never thought it would come together quite this well, right? We've been pushing, I chaired a team back in 2017 and again in 2022. And, we've been pushing in the academic full-time division for open bargaining for a really long time. Right? For having people at the table who have a stake in the system so that folks can participate actively. It's how you really build new leaders and new activists. And we didn't have the support of our union back then. And so now, being the union president, the irony is I get to participate in open bargaining in this beautiful new way. And so having representatives back up the CAAT part-time unit, the new unit, and they're from, CAAT full-time, CAAT part-time, CAAT full-time, and all of them talk about the similar experiences they've had with the CEC. Amazing. Makes me want, like, honestly, I'm kind of teary even talking about it now,
All right. And you also had an important service today that happened. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we filed an unfair labor practice against the College Employer Council for failing to disclose adequately the information they had about the mergers of Fleming and St. Lawrence College in particular. So that was served to the CEO of College Employer Council, Graham Lloyd, as well as the representative on their team from Fleming College, Laura Gunning. And what the ULP, the unfair labor practice, basically calls for is a cease and desist on the merger until we can actually get the information we need, be invited in as participants, and have dialogue about how to prevent layoffs, how to prevent closures, and to be an active participant on the go forward, right? So this is really saying you're not bargaining in good faith right out of the gate.
We've been waiting on details about when a task force would be struck as outlined in the MOU and the collective agreement.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we really need to see is when you have a merger, then we are supposed to be invited in as faculty to discuss it, to participate in it, to talk about how to mitigate the impact. And we're looking at a system that is under direct threat. I mean, the funding, even with the, they like to tout it as $6.4 billion, but that doesn't even take us out of last place because that's over several years. And it's not just the colleges, it's the universities. So you're talking about at least 47 different institutions. So this is not actually very much money. It's not even close to what we need to fix the system. And certainly, if they're talking about mergers between Fleming and St. Lawrence, that's the tip of the iceberg. We can see what's coming, right? So, you've got the largest series of layoffs in Canadian history, certainly in Ontario. You got over 12,000 people. You're up over 700 program closures. At what point do they think they need to talk to faculty and support staff about how to fix what they've broken?
And one of the things that the ULP calls for is a moratorium as well, or a cease and desist on any further layoffs.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is going before the labor board, and it is to put us in the best possible position and to keep good jobs in these communities and in these colleges. Our students need it. Our faculty and support staff need it. And certainly, even the CEC should recognize the importance of such a move, right? In order to protect the public system, in order to make sure that we have a good quality public system. This isn't about right sizing. There is obviously some larger plan in place, and we think it's coming from the government as much as from Colleges Ontario or anything else, but we can help be part of the resistance. Just because the government of the day says that something should happen doesn't mean that they're going to do it unimpeded.
All right. Thank you so much, JP. Do you have a final message for the staff and faculty across Fleming and St. Lawrence colleges in particular?
Absolutely. What I would say to everyone in the system is that, this is a really hard time that we're going through, and they're deliberately trying to demoralize us and make us feel like we don't have any power to fight back. Today was the beginning of demonstrating that we actually do. And for everybody that feels like, maybe it's not worth it or, they're so dejected. I mean, we're all seeing our comrades, our colleagues, losing jobs. We're all stressed beyond belief. But I can tell you this, if we don't fight back, we know the outcome. It will continue to get worse. We have nothing to lose in this. If we do fight, if we stand together and we build that solidarity, we have a chance to fix this thing and turn it around.
April Stevens, lead steward for Local 418, support staff at SLC, and I were honored to be among the solidarity guests at the bargaining table. And April played a key role.
Yeah, it was a really interesting day. I didn't actually know I was going to be playing the part that I did until I got there, but that's okay. Actually, it turned out to be pretty exciting. So what happened was full-time support, part-time support, and full-time academic also showed up today so that we could all be together to show our support in working together and, just trying to find out some solutions to what is happening in the college system right now while we had CEC at the table. One of the purposes of today's attendance was to try to speak to the CEC about their transparency, about questions the last few rounds of bargaining. For example, full-time support staff were on strike in the fall, and when we were doing our bargaining up until that time, we had asked very specific questions about closures and restructuring, mergers, things like that. And we were told that they didn't have any information, they didn't have any answers, only to find out that on September 26th, during the full-time support staff strike, on the morning of the first day of mediation, news broke of Georgian College's Aurelia and Muskoka campuses closures, the exact moment when both parties were entering an agreed upon media blackout. So we were effectively silenced from responding. And then since then, there's been a merger announcement between Fleming and St. Lawrence College, which we also feel they were not transparent in the information with that upcoming.
And what was your reaction to the unfair labor practice that came forward?
So I believe what JP requested was a freeze on the merger itself and any potential labor, like layoffs, any labor action, anything like that at this moment until the ULP is dealt with by the ministry. It was different than what I thought it was going to be, because I thought I was just going to be going up and just kind of being a body to show like support. But it actually was really exciting, and it felt empowering, like in the room with all the members after the end of the meeting. Like it felt really good. It felt like everybody was connected, felt like everybody wanted to support each other. It felt like everybody understood how important everything is right now and how much we need to work together. And yeah, I just felt like really excited. It made me feel excited about things.
Know your rights.
Welcome to another edition of Know Your Rights. Today, we're diving into a topic that's heavy but absolutely crucial for every faculty member to understand. What exactly does our collective agreement say about layoffs? Before we get into the details, I want to be clear. The protections we're discussing today apply specifically to our full-time faculty. Unfortunately, we've already seen the quiet decimation of our partial load and contract faculty. So many of our colleagues have simply walked away or been abruptly reduced to precarious part-time contracts as the college shifts work around. But for those of you in full-time roles, the collective agreement provides a specific legal shield against arbitrary job loss. Over the past year, your union and the College Employment Stability Committee, or CESC, has been actively meeting in order to fight for job stability. Under Article 27.05 of the collective agreement, if the college plans to lay off full-time employees, they must formally notify both the union local president and the CESC. This notification triggers a mandatory meeting within 7 calendar days to discuss the circumstances, identify the affected employees, and look for alternative assignments. If the college still decides to proceed after these meetings, they must give the affected employee a written notice of at least 90 calendar days. But what if the college is planning a mass layoff? If they plan to lay off 5% of the full-time regular staff or 20 employees, whichever is less, the extended staff reduction rules in Article 29 apply. In this scenario, the college has to hand over the budgetary data that they use to make their decision. They are then legally required to pause their layoff plan for 30 calendar days. During this month-long pause, the CESC can propose alternatives to save jobs like voluntary early retirements, adjusting faculty instructional assignments, or finding other budgetary measures. Now, let's talk about what happens if you actually receive that 90-day notice. You have what are formally called placement and displacement rights, often referred to as bumping rights, outlined in Article 27.06. The agreement mandates a specific cascade to protect your full-time status. First, the college must try to reassign you to a vacant full-time position within the college, provided you have the competence, skill, and experience to do the job. Secondly, if there's no vacancies, you have the right to displace a full-time employee with less seniority in your same classification. And then if that's not an option, you can displace a less senior full-time employee in a different classification. Still no luck? Then you can displace 2 partial load employees. That's right. 2 partial load contracts can be put together to maintain a full-time role, provided you have more months of seniority than their months of service. Finally, let's discuss the aftermath. If you're laid off, you retain recall rights for 2 years under Article 27.09, meaning if your former position or another full-time role that you're qualified for becomes available, the college must recall you based on seniority before hiring anyone new. Alternatively, if you choose to waive your recall rights, you can elect to take severance pay. The Standard Collective Agreement provides severance scale under Article 27.10 that tops out at 50% of your annual base salary if you have 23 or more years of continuous service. However, as we've discussed in previous updates regarding the 2025 Kaplan Award, there is a critical temporary update you need to be aware of. The Kaplan Award introduced a new letter of understanding for enhanced severance. This temporary measure provides significantly higher payouts, up to 80% for 24 or more years of service. It's vital to understand that this enhanced scale is temporary for this specific agreement term. Because choosing between a grievance, recall rights, and enhanced severance payout is a massive decision, you should never make it alone. To wrap up, a layoff notice is not the end of the conversation. Between the CESC's active mandate to find alternatives, your 90-day notice period, and your extensive displacement rights, you have options. Know your rights, read Article 27, and reach out to a union steward. Thanks for tuning in. Stay strong and in solidarity. We'll see you next time.
And now, another fun episode of Is It a Gripe or a Grievance?
Hi, Jillian. I am on sick leave, and the college has contacted TELUS Health to review my case. They are demanding access to not only my medical documentation, but also any test results to determine if I am eligible for my sick leave. Can they do this?
Oh, this is the hardest one for members to manage, and the unfortunate rule is yes. The reason why they can do it is we don't pay for our sick time, the college does. So they own our sick time. They own our sick days. So can they ask for medical documentation? Yes, to an extent. They can only ask for medical documentation that is about this sick leave. So if I give you an example, let's say, have schizophrenia. I don't want anybody to know that I have schizophrenia. I do my job, take my meds, everything is good. I then get diagnosed with, breast cancer. Should TELUS Health know about my schizophrenia? No. Should my doctor be giving information about that to the college? Hell no. The only thing they can know about is the breast cancer results, tests, treatments, plans. And it's all about functionality. So what is it that is going on in my health that I can no longer function at work? That's where members really need to work with their healthcare provider to get the information to answer the questions in a way that allows TELUS Health to approve our sick time. Most physicians, and we know this is true, anybody who's been to the doctor knows, they have about 10 minutes, maybe less, to fill out the form. And so it's tick, 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 and off it goes. And they don't provide evidence, they don't provide data, they don't provide anything besides the doctor says so. And so when TELUS Health is questioning, they're not questioning the member. They're questioning the veracity of the doctor's decision-making. They're actually questioning whether or not the doctor is competent, which is awful, but members need to see it that way and not that they're questioning, they think I'm lying. No. They don't think you're lying. They think your doctor's incompetent. And we need to bring that to our physicians in that format. Because we need our physicians to get annoyed and say, no, my decision that this member is sick, is too sick to work, is right because. And they need to provide that information. A lot of what we do and the form that TELUS Health gives is, can you lift 25 pounds? Who the hell cares? Unless you're a trades teacher, I don't have to lift 25 pounds. I lift a mouse. I talk. Can I teach sitting? Yes. Can I teach standing? Yes. That's the whole thing is, but if I can't remember what I'm going to say next, or if I'm distracted, or worse yet, if I'm going to burst out into tears in the middle of class, or I'm diagnosed with schizophrenia and I hear voices in my head that are saying things that are distracting me, or I'm blurting out things that are inappropriate, then I shouldn't be working. But TELUS Health's documentation doesn't demonstrate that really well. And they don't want to take the patient's word for it. And when we're dealing with specifically mental health teacher here, we're dealing with things like mental health. How does your physician know you're too sad to function? They ask you. And TELUS Health then doesn't believe the physician because they didn't run a test. Well, I'm sorry. It is very difficult to get objective data about feeling of sadness. There are ways, but it is much more cumbersome. And it means the physician has to do a lot more work and a lot more documentation and a lot more evidence. And physicians don't have the time or the energy. And so we get these, unfortunately, forms that are sort of there because they have a right to know, but they're not given enough information. So it really complicated. And so the answer is yes, sort of, particularly about this sick event. What that data looks like could be a report, but again, raw blood work is meaningless. So we really need the interpretation of the physician, and they need to include a lot more rationale, because TELUS Health is questioning the veracity of the decision-making of the physician and not the employee. And I deal a lot with this, and it's really important that members understand that statement. So we have a bunch of things in place because we've had so much issues with that. First thing, you need to contact a steward like right now and say, this is what's happening. What are they allowed to have? And we'll walk you through it. Second thing is if you're denied appeal. Third thing is if you're denied appeal, but while you're doing your appeal, contact a steward, and we have hired a physician who reviews this kind of documentation. And we'll say, oh, I see the problem. You're missing this form or that piece of information. Do you want me to contact your doctor and have a consult? And the local pays for that. So this is a private clinic that works with anybody's physician, nurse practitioner, whatever healthcare provider to support them in filling out the documentation so that their decision-making, all of the documents are there to support the member's sick leave.
So it's not a grievance.
It could be a grievance. It could wind up being a grievance. It has to start out first being an appeal to TELUS Health. And then after, if it's secondarily denied, the member has to come back to work. It's always due first, grieve later. And then we can grieve it. We can grieve it under a bunch of articles, but the goal is to avoid the grievance and allow the person to have the time off they need to get better.
You've been listening to Cat Tales, stories that matter to faculty and beyond. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Visit slcfaculty.ca. and stay connected with us on social media.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or statements of OPSEU, SEFPO, St. Lawrence College, or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. While every effort is made to ensure accuracy, SLC Faculty Local 417 makes no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, reliability, or suitability of the information shared.